thank you to retired Lieutenant Karen Dubas and the oldest police band ever, Milwaukee Police Band. Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here, and I would like to introduce some of our special guests that are here and the executive staff of our department. Mayor Tom Barrett is here. Could you please stand for me? Thank you. Thank you. Chief of Police Alfonso Morales. Assistant Chief Ray Banks. And Inspector Gordon. He half got up. I don't know if you saw him, but he's third from the left there in the front. And then we have Milwaukee Police Chaplain George Papacristo. And our MC for tonight will be the news anchor from CBS 58 News, Amanda Porterfield. Okay, will you please rise for the presentation of the colors by the Milwaukee Police Department Color Guard under the direction of Lieutenant Derek Harris. like to invite Department Chaplain George Papacristo to the stage for the invocation.
Thank you, Captain. Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, creator of every good and perfect thing, we thank you for this occasion. We congratulate those who have been especially selected this evening for awards and honors. We applaud them. Bless them, O Lord, on this happy occasion. May these ceremonies be a reminder to each of us that excellence in life takes time and effort, often requires a lonely walk, and always involves going the second mile. We remember also, O Lord, the families, friends, and co-workers who have supported those whom we honor. We are never the sole contributors to our own successes. In happy moments like these, when we are permitted to see good grow from our efforts, help us to discover and appreciate the goodness of your presence in our lives. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I'm Captain Nicole Davila. I'm the training director here, and I am the commander of the Police Academy. I'd like to welcome all of you, the friends, the family, the co-workers, for coming. When I was thinking about what I was going to say today, and someone said, don't repeat this speech, don't repeat that speech, and I thought, well, not nice, not what today is about. We're about celebration. So I walked in here, it was 50 degrees cooler, if not more at that time, and I looked around, and all you could see was our badge, and everything was quiet, and I thought, these are the days I love my job. Today, in May, when we celebrate the awards and the good work of our citizens and our officers, and then again in November, just twice a year. So I thank you for coming to be a part of the Spring Merit Awards for today. Now I would like to have Mayor Tom Barrett come to the stage.
I thought you loved your job every day. Well, good evening. Welcome to what I always enjoy. A fabulous evening is ahead of us. I think every person in this gym, as a child, probably watched a television show involving police. There may have been different shows depending upon our ages as to who the stars were, but one thing was always clear in those television shows, and that is whether it was a half-hour show or an hour show, it was packed with activities. And watching those shows, you'd get the impression that every moment of a police officer's life is filled with drama, bravery, professionalism, and valor. We know that that's not always the case, and I don't mean that as a negative statement at all. We know that the dedication and the sacrifices that our police officers make for us is not always TV worthy. Sometimes it's challenging and frustrating and angering. Sometimes it's boring and monotonous. Oftentimes it's dangerous. But tonight is our opportunity to transform our police officers' actions into one of those television shows. Because for the next hour or so, we're going to hear those stories where our police officers demonstrate the professionalism, the valor, the teamwork, the commitment, and the dedication that all made us excited as a young person to view this career. So to the men and women who serve our department, I give a genuine, heartfelt thanks for the sacrifices you make on behalf of the residents of this city. To the family members who are here tonight, I thank you for your sacrifices as well. Because you are the ones that have to go through the dinner without dad or mom, the missed graduation, the missed Little League game, the delayed birthday party celebration. But please know that you're doing it for a higher purpose. That this is not a job, that this is a vocation. And it's not a vocation for everyone because of the sacrifices that are required. But I love being at this ceremony because, again, it makes us see how much our police officers are real people. And they're here for us to help us and to help people that they have never met before in their lives, people that they may not want to associate with, but are people that they are making sacrifices for because it's the right thing to do and because they have been trained at an academy that provides, I believe, the best training in this country. So to Chief Morales, to your command staff, to all the men and women who work for the Milwaukee Police Department, thank you. We appreciate your bravery. To those citizens who are here tonight, you too get to be on the television show because you too have stepped forward and shown that citizens, people who don't do this for a living, but are willing to get engaged in our society and our city, deserve our respect as well. And it's a great opportunity for the city to say thank you. Thank you for stepping forward in situations where probably most people would turn and run. So let's enjoy tonight and thank all of our men and women who serve the Milwaukee Police Department. Thank you very much.
Chief Morales.
I got a new hip before I became chief, so I can run up to the stage now. Okay. I had some talking points to talk about today, but at the end, do we really need the talking points to thank our dedicated men and women of the police department for their hard work and dedication, along with the citizens of Milwaukee who participated in making Milwaukee a safer place to live, work, and raise a family. That's what we strive for. I'll keep it short. It's warm in here. Our Milwaukee Police Department makes 300 to 500 plus contacts a day. And we can focus on the fraction of that percent where we do something wrong and ignore the 99.5% of the time when we do things right and harp on that. And I've said in community meetings that if we allow that fraction of percent to continue to be negative, that can multiply. And when one incident is bad, multiple incidents can come out. And then it looks like we have a big problem. Today we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the 99.5% of the time when our staff does everything right. We're going to talk about promoting the law enforcement image. When our men and women of the department strive so hard to make Milwaukee a better place to live, work, and raise a family. I want to thank you for doing that. You are the people that I support 100%. And I thank you for making us proud. God bless you, and God bless the citizens that are participating to help Milwaukee be a safer place, and the families who support you when you work nights, weekends, holidays, and keeping this city safe. Thank you very much.
And now our MC for the night, Amanda Porterfield.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank Milwaukee Police Department for having me here today, and I really want to thank all of the officers in the room for not leaving as soon as I walked into the room. You know, as a member of the media, I'm used to everybody scattering when I get there. So thank you for sticking around. Of course, we have a lot of good news to share tonight, a lot of heroic acts to highlight. But before we get started, I just wanted to talk about the pleasure I had a few months ago, I got to sit down with Captain Davila and 6 other members of the Milwaukee Police Department. It was one of the best interviews I've ever done in my life. I mean, these women are awesome. We laughed, we shared stories that I won't repeat ever or here, and some that I wanted to tell everybody. We got teary-eyed, and I learned a lot in just 2 hours that we sat down. And it gave me a new appreciation for what officers do, especially women in law enforcement. So I just wanted to shout out to Captain Davila and Captain Heather Worth and Captain Kristen Riestra, if she's here, Lieutenant Michelle Graham, Lieutenant Kristen Felsman, and Officers Kiana Vines and Officer Tiara Sheets, because they are some awesome women and just a few examples of just upstanding members of the Milwaukee Police Department. And so I just wanted to give them a round of applause before we start tonight. And speaking of appreciation, as I get ready to read these stories about the members of MPD who are getting their merit awards this evening, I just implore everybody to really listen, because these are truly heroic acts, and I am honored to be here tonight to recognize all of you. So without further ado, let's get started. For District 1, Police Sergeant Tanya M. Bowl and Officers Matthew K. Driesen, Reynaldo Roman Jr., Gerald L. Schmidt, Joseph L. Shabalka, and John R. Teachin are receiving the Life Saving Award. On March 3rd, 2018, Milwaukee Police Boat 1596 was patrolling the Milwaukee River to ensure the safety of those attending the annual Shamrock Shuffle. Around 10 p.m., a man fell in the water near the Highland Avenue Bridge. Officer Shabalka maneuvered the boat toward the bridge while Officers Roman and Teachin put on their ice rescue suits. 2 people were on a ledge holding onto the man who was in the river up to his armpits. Time was of the essence, and the air and water temperature were in the 30s. Officer Shabalka exercised caution so as not to cause a big wake that would have resulted in more people falling in the water. Officer Roman entered the water, and Officer Teachin remained on the boat to assist. Officers Driesen and Schmidt were on the bridge above the water and lowered a rescue line to the subject. They also kept a crowd of onlookers from approaching the bridge's rail and contained the scene. Sergeant Bowl used a rescue sling and threw it on Officer Roman in the water. Officer Roman placed the sling around the man's torso, and Sergeant Bowl started pulling the men back to the boat. Officers Shabalka and Teachin then helped both men back into the boat. The teamwork exhibited by this group of MPD members ensured the survival of a man who had fallen into the river. Their quick thinking and decisive actions saved his life. We ask that Officers Driesen and Roman remain on stage as they're receiving a second life-saving award. On January 3rd, 2018, Officers Driesen and Roman responded to an attempted suicide in the 800 block of North Cass Street. The subject's girlfriend met the officers at the door and explained that her boyfriend hung himself and he was not breathing. After a quick assessment, the officers began several rounds of chest compressions and CPR. Medical help arrived and continued with life-saving measures while the man was transported to the nearest hospital for treatment. These officers provided immediate, essential life-saving measures and prevented the loss of life. Officers David D. Bublitz, Paul M. Helminiak, and Matthew M. Nagalski are receiving the Life Saving Award. On October 4th, 2017, officers were assigned to the Bradley Center to manage pedestrian and vehicle flow at a sports event. A vehicle suddenly pulled into the middle of the intersection, and an occupant jumped out of the vehicle to alert officers that his friend desperately needed help. Officers Bublitz and Nagalski immediately removed the unconscious man and began CPR. Officer Helminiak was handling an arrest at a nearby police administration building and without hesitation responded to the broadcast made by responding officers for medical assistance. Officer Helminiak arrived on the scene and administered Narcan to that man. Within minutes, the subject responded and officers were able to obtain a pulse. The subject was transported to a nearby hospital for treatment of a heroin overdose. These officers intervened at a critical event and succeeding in preventing the loss of life. Now we ask that Officer Nagalski to stay on the stage because he's receiving another life-saving award. Mr. Jeffrey C. Quazer is receiving the Valorious Conduct Citizen Award. On March 3rd, 2018, Officer Nagalski was working at a Marquette University basketball game at the BMO Harris Bradley Center. Suddenly, a 72-year-old man in attendance collapsed. Mr. Quazer, an usher at the Bradley Center, saw the man lying on his back, so he ran over and checked for his pulse, and when he didn't feel one, he started chest compressions. Officer Nagalski joined Mr. Quazer and paramedics with other life-saving measures, including CPR. The man was eventually transported to a local hospital for further treatment. The quick actions and efficient treatment by Officer Nagalski and Mr. Quazer were instrumental in saving that man's life. Detectives Alexander C. Ayala, Eric J. Drager, Thomas J. Obregon, Michael W. Tomei, and Steve E. Wells, Police Officer Louise S. Bray, and Police Aide Andrew M. Robleski are receiving the Meritorious Service Award. On June 16, 2017, a woman was driving in the 600 block of East Clybourne Street when two suspects approached her in a pickup truck. One of the suspects threatened her with a hammer and forced her to drive while the second suspect followed in the pickup truck. The suspects subsequently stopped and forced the victim into their truck. The suspects threatened to shoot her, and one of the suspects sexually assaulted her. The victim was later let go in Kenosha County, where she summoned help. Detectives Wells and Officer Bray began to investigate that incident. Officer Bray used her skills as an interviewer to develop a detailed statement and timeline from the victim. Detective Wells showed empathy while he deployed a composite sketch of one of the suspects. During the course of the investigation, a fingerprint was recovered. Through this print, the name, email, and address of one of the suspects was generated. Police aide Robleski took it upon himself to search sources for other possible information. He was able to find a license plate that the suspect was driving. Investigators tracked the suspect to Louisville, Kentucky area, where one of the suspects was taken into custody. Detectives Tomei, Obregon, Ayala, and Drager went to Kentucky to continue that investigation. The detectives used their skills to locate the second suspect and take him into custody. Detectives Obregon and Ayala obtained a confession from both suspects in the incident. Through their hard work and dedication, this group was able to obtain key details that allowed for a search for suspects and the ability to secure key evidence and clear a high-profile crime. For District 2, the Excellence in Police Service Award is presented to the District 2 Community Prosecution Unit and Anti-Gang Unit. Sergeant Guadalupe Velasquez, Detective Efren Cornajo, Officer Jose R. Arzaga, Officer David H. Cabral, Officer Ryan E. Casey, Officer Matthew J. Diener, Officer Ryan R. Foth, Officer Aaron A. Jackson, Officer Kenneth J. Justice, Officer Richard J. Klarkowski, Officer Louis J. Kopeski, Officer Kevin E. Vodica, Officer Michael P. Walker, and Officer Matthew L. Davis. This group, with the help of the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, The Department of Neighborhood Services and the City Attorney's Office has worked tirelessly to address absentee and problematic landlords to District 2. These landlords and their questionable practices negatively impacted the quality of life and value of homes in the neighboring community. Thanks to their collective investigative work, 2 property owners were successfully sued for homes that were used for prostitution-related activities. The results of the litigation had a positive impact as both residents and business owners were thankful for the efforts in the neighborhood. Of 12 targeted properties in the district, 8 have been sold to responsible property owners who are committed to making a positive impact. This group has worked tirelessly on quality of life issues for citizens in District 2, and their work resulted in decreased crime, additional citizen cooperation, and robust community engagement. Let's give this big group another exciting round of applause. The Excellence in Police Service Award is presented to Officers Vance A. Scollin and Paul E. Zimborski. While assigned to District 2, these officers have been on the bicycle unit and work the Greenfield Avenue beat. This area is challenged with drug sales, vagrancy issues, and prostitution. Working together as a team, the officers have built relationships with business owners and residents to help improve the quality of life there. They've made more than 400 arrests, half of them prostitution-related. The intelligence that they gather has led to numerous arrests and convictions for various crimes. The officers understand how important the role of a beat officer is in building trust within the community, and they take pride in what they do. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officers Matthew L. Davis and Louis J. Kopeski. On January 25th, 2018, there was an armed robbery of a business in the 2500 block of South 6th Street. The officers responded in an undercover car to saturate the area and saw 2 men who matched the clothing and physical description of the robbery suspects. One of the men pulled a handgun from his waistband while it appeared the other served as a lookout. The officers realized these suspects posed a danger to citizens, and it was likely that they would commit more armed robberies. The officers quickly laid out a plan, exited their vehicle, and took the suspects into custody. These suspects were later charged in federal court for 7 different robberies. The quick actions of the officers helped prevent more crimes from potentially taking place. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officer Quentin L. Grant. On November 1st, 2017, Officer Grant was headed home after his workday when he came upon a crash on I-43. Officer Grant saw a semi-truck had crashed with another vehicle. Officer Grant quickly pulled his car to the side of the road to help out. Both diesel tanks of the truck were leaking, and Officer Grant was able to assist the dazed truck driver to safety. Officer Grant then went to the other vehicle where he saw the occupant was unconscious. He tried to pull the occupant out of the car, but the diesel fuel ignited and the flames overcame him. Tragically, the occupant of that car did die from his injuries. Officer Grant's willingness to put his life on the line for complete strangers is commendatory. His selfless actions were instrumental in saving the life of that truck driver. The Valorous Conduct Citizen Award is presented to Mr. Daryl S. Rush. On November 20th, 2017, a female citizen was in her car in the 5600 block of South 27th Street when a man approached her vehicle, opened the door, and entered it. The suspect told her to drive the car, which she refused to do. The suspect, realizing the victim was not complying with his demands, began punching her and yelling at her to get out of the car. During the struggle, the woman sounded her horn and screamed to draw attention. Mr. Rush was in the area and heard the victim's desperate screams. He ran over to the vehicle and saw the man hitting the woman and fighting back with his keys between his fingers. Mr. Rush punched the suspect numerous times. The suspect became extremely agitated at Mr. Rush, yelled at him, and left the scene on foot. Mr. Rush stayed with the victim to ensure her safety. Mr. Rush is a U.S. Navy veteran, and he immediately came to the aid of that citizen, and he prevented that vehicle from being taken and saved her life. Let's give him another round of applause. For District 3, Officer Jacob T. Schmidt is receiving the Medal of Valor Rescue Award, and Officer Nicholas L. Ulatowski is receiving the Life Saving Award. On March 23, 2018, the officers were on patrol in the 1500 block of South Layton Boulevard when they saw a balcony of a nearby home in flames. Without hesitation, the officers ran toward that home. Officer Ulatowski entered the lower unit of the building and helped evacuate a resident with his pet. Officer Schmidt evacuated the residents of the upper unit, but one of the individuals was confined to a wheelchair. So Officer Schmidt tried to carry the wheelchair down the stairs, but it broke. So instead, he hoisted the woman over his shoulder and valiantly carried her to safety. These officers displayed a great amount of courage and bravery above and beyond their expected duties. They disregarded their own safety to ensure that residents in the building were safe. Officers A.J. N. Alvarez and Antonio L. Obregon are receiving the Life Saving Award. On December 7, 2017, these officers responded to a suicide attempt. The caller had identified a female in a bathtub of water with cuts to her wrist and empty prescription bottles next to the bathtub. Without hesitation, the officers moved the woman, who was cold to the touch, from the bathtub to the hallway where they could start life-saving measures. While assisting, officers placed tourniquets on her wrists. Officers Alvarez and Obregon continued with CPR. Eventually, the woman regained a pulse and began breathing on her own. These officers intervened in a suicidal attempt and succeeded in preventing the loss of life. And we asked Officer Obregon to stay on stage as he is receiving a separate Meritorious Service Award along with Police Officer Alexander D. Neuter. On November 20th, 2017, these officers responded to a business check at a local gas station in the 9200 block of West Blue Mound Road. The officers noticed a clerk running from the business waving her arms to get their attention. The gas station was just robbed at gunpoint. The clerk provided enough details for the officers to begin a search in the immediate area since the robber fled from the station on foot. Officer Neuter saw a male subject that fit the description of a robber hiding behind a nearby dumpster, and immediately the order was given for the subject to show his hands, which he did not. Officer Obregon cut off the man's escape path and took control of the subject's arm. Without hesitation, the subject spun his body to free himself, and the officers worked together to gain control of that man. A handgun fell from his waist. The subject was eventually taken into custody and admitted to robbing that gas station. These officers demonstrated the mission of maintaining safe neighborhoods by preventing criminals from committing future crimes. Officers Kevin G. Galkey and Aaron L. Nelson are receiving the Meritorious Service Award. On July 27, 2017, these officers responded to the 900 block of North Hawley Road after being flagged down by a citizen. A male subject was on top of a bridge and threatening to jump. Officer Nelson took up a position to act as a barrier while Officer Galkey started to talk to the man and implored him to get out of the roadway and off of the bridge. Following a lengthy discussion, the man tried to push himself up onto the bridge railing in order to jump. The officers, though, were able to position themselves in order to prevent this and took the man into custody. The man was taken to Milwaukee County Mental Health for further evaluation, and the action of these officers prevented that man from suffering a mental crisis from causing himself injury or death. For District 4, the Medal of Valor Rescue Award is presented to Officers Nicholas J. Reed and Nicholas R. Schley. On December 26, 2017, these officers were on patrol in the 5400 block of West Villard Avenue when they saw a car slide out of control, strike a wooden utility pole, and flip over. As the vehicle came to a stop, the car's engine burst into flames with the occupants still inside. The officers risked their own lives and pulled the driver and another passenger from a burning car. The occupants of the car were injured, but due to the actions of these officers, they survived. The Nick Squad, as the pair is affectionately known, received local and national attention for their heroics. They exemplify what is best in policing: courageous, humble, hardworking, and dedicated to serving and protecting citizens, even when the situation is dangerous. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officers Charles A. Leach and Martinez T. Moore. On October 31st, 2017, these officers responded to subject with a gun complaint in the 7100 block of West Silver Spring Drive. The caller indicated her daughter texted her pleading for help as her boyfriend had beaten her up and pointed a gun at her. The officers diligently searched the records management system because the victim's information, the address that was provided by dispatch, didn't register to a real address. A check with the Department of Transportation revealed the victim's address, and the officers immediately drove to the residence. When officers entered the victim's home, they discovered her crying in a closet. She was fearful, had blood covering her nose. Her face was swollen in various places. The suspect had punched her repeatedly, causing her to lose consciousness. And when she regained consciousness, the suspect was standing over her, pointing a handgun at her. That suspect then grabbed her by the throat and choked her. But these officers entered the home at a crucial time in that victim's life. Due to the determination of the officers to locate that victim, she got medical treatment and was relocated to a safe place away from her abuser. Oh, and we ask that Officer Moore stay on stage as he is receiving another Meritorious Service Award along with Officer James D. Luckett. On November 2nd, 2017, these officers received information that a vehicle stolen in a robbery was currently parked in an alley in the 5300 block of North 38th Street. As the officers approached the vehicle with weapons drawn, the driver immediately fled on foot, while the remaining two occupants remained inside. The occupants were taken into custody while assisting officers arrived on the scene. During this time, two additional males exited a nearby home yelling profanities. The officers made an immediate positive identification of one of the suspects as a result of seeing photos of the crime scene where the stolen vehicle was taken. As a direct result of the quick response of the officers to the information received from the informant and their previous familiarity with the incident, all suspects were taken into custody with further incident. These officers demonstrated their commitment to maintaining safe neighborhoods by preventing criminals from further crime sprees. The Meritorious Service Award is presented to Officers Sean M. Patrick and Joseph G. Spingola. On December 12, 2017, these officers responded to a shooting in the 9600 block of West Fond du Lac Avenue. A maroon Grand Prix with 2 occupants was involved in the incident, and the officers spotted the vehicle while en route to the crime scene. Without delay, the officers followed the vehicle and a pursuit ensued. The speeding vehicle drove onto the sidewalk, disregarded traffic signals, and continuously violated traffic laws during their attempt to flee. Eventually, the occupants exited the vehicle and ran into an alley in their attempt to get away. The officers began searching the area, and a short time later, the officers saw one of the suspects running, and he was quickly taken into custody. These officers exemplified the mission of the Milwaukee Police Department and showed their dedication to apprehending dangerous criminals. Now on to District 5. Officers Zachary F. Ramian and Kurt R. Zarnick are receiving the Medal of Valor Combat Award. On January 18, 2018, several District 5 officers responded to a call at North Richard Street and East Locust Street. Upon arrival, they were told by witnesses that a man with a gun had pulled a female victim into a home. Officers Zarnick and Ramian began knocking on the door, and the female victim let them in. The officers searched the house for that armed male and approached a bathroom with a closed door. Suddenly, the door opened and 2 shots were fired in the direction of the officers. Luckily, they were not hit. The officers created distance and evaluated the situation despite just being shot at. Then they heard the male screaming and crying from the bathroom. Officer Zarnick opened the door, took control of that suspect, and got him away from the gun. Officer Ramian remained cognizant of his surroundings and covered Officer Zarnick from other potential threats. The suspect's gun and casings were found inside the home, and a bullet was found lodged in the wall between the doors where the officers were standing. These officers demonstrated extreme bravery in the line of fire. Police officers Stephen J. Cook and Casey M. Narlock are receiving the Life Saving Award. On September 27, 2017, these officers responded to a shooting in the 3200 block of North 29th Street. They were the first to arrive on the scene and saw the victim, a 31-year-old man that had several severe gunshot wounds, including one to the thigh. Officer Narlock applied a tourniquet to the victim's wound, and Officer Cook assisted by calmly and properly positioning that victim. The victim was transported to a local hospital for treatment of his injuries, and responding medics stated that had that tourniquet not been applied, the victim would have likely died. The quick and decisive actions by these officers standing right before you saved that shooting victim's life. Officer David J. Latier is receiving the Purple Star Award. On January 20th, 2016, Officer Latier responded to a call for service in the 2500 block of West Hopkins Street. Officer Latier was standing behind his squad when a car traveling at more than 60 miles per hour struck his squad car. Officer Latier was thrown into the air and 25 feet down the road from where he was standing. He was rushed to Frederick Hospital for immediate treatment. He suffered multiple breaks in his left wrist and injuries to his jawbone and left knee. A blood draw of the driver of the striking car revealed a blood alcohol content of more than 3 times the legal limit, and this was his 6th OWI offense. Officer Latier was able to return to full duty 8 months later after extensive rehabilitation. Officer Latier has demonstrated courage and perseverance while recovering from this tragedy, and his will to regain strength is an inspiration to all of us. Police officers Joseph I. Sarnick and Damon M. Wilcox are receiving the Meritorious Service Award. On December 30th, 2017, the officers were dispatched to an armed robbery in the 1400 block of West Locust Street. They were met by two victims who stated that two suspects in a white Infiniti pointed guns at them and stole their cell phones before they drove away. One of the victims remembered the license plate of the suspect's car, and the officers went to the address of that vehicle. The officers saw two males enter the car at that location, and they performed a traffic stop. The passenger in the car ran from the car, threw a handgun, and was taken into custody after a brief foot chase. The driver was also taken into custody. The officers found an additional gun in the car, as well as two stolen cell phones. The officers used quick thinking and experience to conduct follow-up in a timely manner and helped bring justice to those two victims. For District 6, the Life-Saving Award is presented to Officers Christopher M. Matashaw and Michael S. Maldonado. On February 27, 2018, these officers responded to the 2900 block of South Herman Street for a report of a sick and injured person. The caller told officers that her son was a heroin user and was not responding from an upstairs bathroom. The officers tried to make contact with the man, but they were unsuccessful. Fearing that his life was in danger, the officers forced open the door and found the man on the floor without a pulse and not breathing. The officers administered Narcan and then began chest compressions. Eventually, the man started breathing on his own. Medical personnel stated that had it not been for the actions of these officers, that man may have died from an overdose. For District 7, Officers Nicholas G. Gajewski, Courtney R. Hartle, and Daniel A. Sturma are receiving the Life-Saving Award. On November 23, 2017, these officers responded to the 4800 block of North 41st Street. A distraught female had dropped off her young son at her aunt's house. The mother asked her aunt to take care of her child and then just drove away. Her aunt feared for her niece's safety due to her past history of drug use and mental disorders. Officers coached the aunt in texting and calling her niece. After several attempts, the niece contacted her aunt through FaceTime. And through FaceTime, the officers were able to observe the live video. The officers determined that the niece had parked her vehicle on top of the Hone Bridge. She was telling her aunt that she was going to jump. Without hesitation, a phone call was made to the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department quickly responded, located the subject, and began negotiations. Eventually, that niece allowed them to transport her to the Milwaukee County Mental Health Complex for treatment, and these officers responded, and their keen observation skills and immediate action prevented this woman's loss of life. Mr. Trent M. Polk is receiving the Valorous Conduct Citizen Award. On December 11th, 2017, officers responded to a sick, injured person in the 4200 block of North Sherman Boulevard. A child's mother had placed her baby in its crib, and when she went to check on the infant, she noticed he wasn't moving, and his face was blue. Immediately, she called Mr. Polk, the baby's father, who then gave CPR to the baby and medical help was summoned. The infant started breathing on its own after about a minute of CPR from its own father. Mr. Polk shared that he had learned CPR while in the Marine Corps. Due to Mr. Polk's immediate intervention, he prevented that baby's loss of life. For the Central Booking and Court Administration, the Life-Saving Award is presented to police officers Lisa M. Capitz and Phyllis T. Pulliam. On December 12th, 2017, these officers heard choking sounds coming from a prisoner in the cell. A male prisoner was trying to hang himself by tying his T-shirt to the metal bunk. The officers immediately took action by lifting the man back onto the metal bunk, relieving the tension of the shirt around his neck. They administered a sternum rub to the man, and he began letting out gasps of air and started breathing on his own. The prisoner received medical treatment at a nearby hospital, and these officers intervened in a suicidal attempt and prevented the loss of life. And for the Criminal Investigation Bureau, the Meritorious Service Award is presented to Detective Timothy J. Keller. On January 30th, 2018, officers from the Fugitive Apprehension Unit were checking a home in the 4300 block of North 44th Street for a homicide suspect. A full tactical setup ensued, and negotiators, including Detective Keller, began to talk to the suspect who was threatening suicide. Using his training and experience, Detective Keller negotiated with the suspect to surrender. Detective Keller had numerous obstacles to overcome during this negotiation, though. The suspect's wife kept calling the subject, which agitated him. The suspect also stated he wanted to call a friend for advice. Detective Keller was able to reason with the suspect regarding the benefits of surrendering, and after more than 4 hours, the suspect was safely taken into custody. Detective Keller showed tenacity by sticking with his training and experience and worked through many obstacles. And through that, he showed perseverance as he dealt with this lengthy situation. For the Sensitive Crimes Division, Detective Efren Cornajo Jr. is receiving the Life Saving Award, and Michael W. Tomei is receiving the Meritorious Service Award. On November 11th, 2017, the detectives were driving on I-43 when they saw a man lying on the side of the highway surrounded by more than a dozen citizens. Detective Tomei immediately went into action and blocked traffic with his vehicle to secure the scene. Detective Cornajo began performing CPR on the male without delay as the victim had serious injuries from that crash. The detectives learned the man pulled his vehicle off to the side of the highway because he ran out of gas. He was refueling when he was struck by another motorist. Unfortunately, in spite of the efforts made to save his life, the victim didn't survive his wounds. As a result of their quick response, though, these detectives helped a man who was in desperate need of medical attention. Their commitment to the citizens of Milwaukee is exemplary. Yeah. So should I do this one next?
No, do this first right now.
Okay. Mr. Joel Roque-Renteria is receiving the Valorious Conduct Award. On November 15th, 2017, an MPD officer was flagged down by 3 men in the 2300 block of North Prospect Avenue. 2 of the men had become very ill while they were power washing an underground parking structure. Mr. Roque-Renteria, who was hearing impaired, was cleaning floors on another level of the structure. He saw the 2 men falling over and passing out, so he immediately ran to help them, and instantly he too experienced difficulty breathing. But he helped the men to their feet and guided them outside to get more help. At that time, the MPD officer who was passing by stopped when he was flagged down by these men. Carbon monoxide levels in this structure were at an upwards of 530 parts per million. The levels that are safe are between 0 and 9 parts per million. It was confirmed that if it was not for the help of Mr. Roque-Renteria, both of the male subjects would have died. The men were transported to a local hospital for treatment. Mr. Roque-Renteria's concern for his fellow workers and his heroic actions saved the lives of these men. We ask that the following members come on stage to get their Excellence in Police Service Award. Sergeant Thomas S. Ackley, Officer Casey C. Donahue, Officer Andrew T. Fuerte, Officer Robert J. Gregory, Officer Jeffrey M. Kennedy, Officer Spencer N. Kilby, Officer Eric J. Kradecki, Officer Ismar Kalinovich, Officer Eric V. Maldonado, Officer Gregory Meyer, Officer Cortland Pedersen, Officer Ryan Reagan, Officer Matthew R. Retzlaff, Officer Jose R. Riviera III, Officer Joseph I. Sarek, Officer Justin R. Schwartzhuber, Officer Hector M. Sosa, and Officer Kurt R. Zarnick. These officers are being recognized for receiving numerous consistent letters of commendation. These letters show the daily outstanding performance of these officers, as well as their willingness to go above and beyond the ordinary call of duty. And there are a lot of them. We appreciate the faithful contribution of all of these officers because you make MPD's mission complete. Let's give them a round of applause. This is going to be a big picture. Let's give them another round of applause. And this next group is even bigger. The first unit service award is going to members of the Homicide unit. We call to the stage Lieutenant Carolyn A. Birch, Lieutenant Thomas J. Casper Jr., Lieutenant John P. Corbett, Lieutenant Eric C. Donaldson, Lieutenant Paul R. Kavanaugh, Lieutenant Paul D. Lau, Lieutenant Daniel P. Thompson, Lieutenant Michael J. Walashewitz, Lieutenant Wisam Yagnam, Detective Rodolfo Alvarado, Detective William M. Baker, Detective Matthew P. Bell, Detective Nathan A. Butts, Detective James A. Campbell, Detective Dennis J. DeValkenair, Detective Jeffrey N. Emanuelson, Detective Michael A. Fidel, Detective Guy J. Fraley, Detective Christopher J. Fritz. There's another page. Detective Rosemary C. Galindo, Detective Timothy B. Graham, Detective Eric Elm Gulbranson, Detective James J. Hensley, Detective James F. Hutchinson, Detective Jeremiah C. Jacks, Detective Troy P. Johnson, Detective Angela M. Juarez, Detective Timothy J. Keller, Detective Keith M. Kopcha, Detective Brian P. Masieski, Detective Michael G. Martin, Detective Kyle R. Morzinski, Detective Daniel E. Prewy, Detective Jake D. Pushnig, Detective Lori M. Rom, Detective Michael Saranak, Detective Scott H. Schmitz, Detective William Schrader, Detective Jeffrey S. Sullivan, Detective Michael J. Tannum, Detective Craig J. Tim, Detective Harold D. Thomas, and Detective Eric K. Villarreal. Oh, wait, we're not finished. Detective Michael C. Washington, Detective Terrence E. Wright, and Police Services Special Investigator Michael Brownrider, Crime Analyst Joshua R. Henze, and Office Assistant to Robin J. Jones. Well, I have to read what they did first. Do you want me to read this whole thing? And here's what they did. The Milwaukee Police Department's employees assigned to the homicide unit work incredibly hard to bring justice to families impacted by violence. This entire group, all of them, never forgets. And this mantra was proven in 2017 like never before. In 2017, the homicide unit solved more cases from past years, 23 of them, than ever before in MPD's history. Detectives and supervisors understand the only way they can provide a small amount of closure to families is to bring someone to justice. Some of the high-profile cases cleared in 2017 that occurred during the previous year include 9-year-old Zalea Jenkins, who was killed when shots were fired into her home in 2017. Jimmy Nash, who was killed in 2014, and his killer was brought to justice in 2017. The family of Trayvon Johnson, who was killed in 2012, finally got justice in 2017 when his killer was charged. Because of this unit standing right here, because of their dedication and their mission of relentless follow-up, they have one of the highest clearance rates for large metropolitan cities. The overall clearance rate reported to the FBI for 2017 was 78%. That's the highest in Milwaukee since 2009. While we honor these detectives and supervisors from the homicide unit, the clearance rate is the result of many different areas of the department as they work together, all of them, to bring justice to these families. Let's give them a round of applause. The second Unit Service Award is going to the Northwest Side Sexual Assault Investigation Unit. From District 3, Police Sergeant Debbie Allen. From District 4, Police Officer Shane M. Bishop. Police Officer Jermaine A. Graham. Police Officer Martinez T. Moore. Police Officer Conway Nimmer Jr. Police Officer Kelly Parker. Police Officer Marlon G. Schiller. Police Officer Russell J. Shoup, Police Officer Sharir Solati, Police Officer Shaletta B. Witters. From the Criminal Investigation Bureau, Police Sergeant Melissa A. Frankowiak, Detective John A. Charles, Detective Jonathan Mejias Rivera, Detective Christopher K. Schlachter, Detective Timothy J. Wallach, from the Internal Affairs Division, Police Sergeant Erwin S. Estacio, Detective Elizabeth Stewart, Detective Stephen E. Wells. Don't break it up. From the Investigative Management Division, Detective Matthew J. Bugman, Detective Richard F. McCune, Forensic Investigator Paul A. Cervera, Forensic Investigator Alfonso Lazo, Forensic Investigator James C. Peterson, Forensic Video Examiner Robbie L. Lloyd, Latent Print Examiner Kenneth S. Schild. From the Office of Community Outreach and Education, Police Sergeant Amy C. Rivera, Police Officer Philip B. Lewis, Police Officer Dennis B. McKnight, Jr. From the Sensitive Crimes Division, Sergeant David A. Ligas, Jr., Sergeant Lisa M. Saffold, Detective Timothy S. Spenning, Detective Jolene A. Del Moral, Detective Jerry Lynn E. Guhagin, Detective Rodney P. Gonzalez, Detective Sonia N. Griffin, Detective Andrew R. Holzum, Detective Michael W. Tomei, Detective Raina M. Vertochnik, Police Officer Luis S. Bray, Police Officer Cindy K. Carlson, Officer Kurt D. Daniel, Officer Nicholas B. Dankert, Police Officer Carrie J. Doyne, Police Officer Ryan Fidlin, Police Officer Henry Fleming, Police Officer James R. Henry, Jr., Police Officer Joan M. Muller, Police Officer Gerardo Orozco, Police Officer Christine L. Rutherford. And from the Specialized Patrol Division, Tactical Enforcement Unit, Police Officer Matthew G. Hellware. And from the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, Assistant District Attorney Aaron Karshen, whose daughters Caitlin and Maya are receiving the award on her behalf. In 2016, 4 stranger sexual assaults occurred on the northwest side of Milwaukee. Milwaukee Police Sensitive Crimes Division formed a partnership with District 4 and engaged in an extensive investigation. Detectives, forensic investigators, police officers, and supervisors worked around the clock in an unrelenting search for that suspect. A canvass of the area was conducted, and a composite sketch of the suspect was shown to those in the area. A manager at a local business was shown the sketch and said it looked like a man who lived at an apartment building nearby. While the manager did not know the man's name, she knew the woman he lived with. So the officer did follow up with that woman what the alleged suspect lived with and found out that she was the victim of a battery by a person named Jonathan Brown. Brown was on probation, and a warrant was put out for his arrest. Once Brown was arrested, a lineup was conducted, and several victims positively identified him as the person who assaulted him. Brown confessed to all of the assaults, and analysis revealed Brown's DNA was on all of these victims. ADA Aaron Karshen issued charges against Brown, who was convicted and sentenced to 54 years in prison. These members, standing here before you, demonstrated a high degree of teamwork, diligence, and perseverance during this high-profile incident, resulting in the arrest and prosecution of Brown. While the victims will undoubtedly have a difficult road ahead of them, it's our hope that the arrest and successful prosecution of the suspect will assist them in their healing. Let's give them a round of applause. Now we're going to end this evening honoring two special men and their sacrifice to the city of Milwaukee. Families of both are in attendance tonight, and we are presenting them with special plaques. Mr. Andrew Tyler's family will be receiving that first plaque. On November 10th, 2017, Andrew Tyler, an MPD school crossing guard, was struck by a vehicle while walking to his post. Mr. Tyler suffered major injuries. He underwent numerous surgeries, but died on December 7th. Mr. Tyler was well known in this community and by the children at Clugy Elementary, whom he helped get across the street every day. At Mr. Tyler's funeral, the Milwaukee Police Department presented his family with MPD's Purple Valor Purple Star Award. It's the first one given to a civilian member of the department. This medal is presented to members who have been injured usually or wounded while performing their duties. Mr. Tyler's selfless sacrifice will forever be remembered by the Milwaukee Police Department. The second family is the family of Greg Ziggy Ziskevich, and they're receiving the second honorary plaque. On March 22nd, 2017, Ziggy was performing his work as a city home inspector near North 23rd Street and West Cherry Street when he was shot and killed. Ziggy was a family man. He was married to his wife for 40 years. He had 3 children and several grandchildren. He was also a dedicated civil servant with more than 30 years of service. 30 years of service to the city of Milwaukee. The Milwaukee Police Department mourns with Ziggy's family at his loss, but they are honoring his legacy tonight of dedication and commitment to the citizens of Milwaukee. Let's give his family a standing ovation. Now, I know it's hot in here, so I won't take too long, but I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight. You know, families like Ziggy's family and members of the police department who were awarded tonight are an inspiration to all of us, including members of the media. You know, we look at the jobs that you do, and, you know, some of these stories I read tonight, I could never do these things, and most people can't. And for you all, it's second nature. So you and your family should definitely be proud tonight, and I just thank you so much for your service and allowing me to take part in this special event. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Amanda for being here, and as always, we get our MC a gift. It's nothing newsworthy. It's probably nothing she's used to at CBS 58, but it's a little piece of Milwaukee Police Department. Thank you for enduring the heat. Thank you to our band again. To the color guard, to Elizabeth, who organizes everything, to Bill Bono, who sets up this event. 6 hours ago, we were doing defense and arrest tactics in here, and now it looks beautiful. We have refreshments In room 182, which is just across this hallway, it's cookies for those kids who are overtired and need the sugar boost, and water. So, and I want to remind all the award recipients to please pick up your awards in room 182. Enjoy, and thank you.